Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm just kind of getting started a little early, make sure it's ready to go, and I'm going to see if anyone shows up. I'm on my new computer, so hopefully we'll hear. See my daughter's beautiful heart right behind me. I don't think any cat is showing up today. I've got my Chromebook with me, so I can try to quickly respond if you guys share any questions. I'm going to start with the questions that have been submitted. I can only do this for a maximum hour. If there's no questions added after I go through the ones that have been submitted, then I will end it. But I will answer questions up to an hour as long as they still come. So this is periodization 5. So I'm going to ask if you can get anything on the empire. Nope, we're going to do that the next unit. After this in periodization 6, we'll look at the world wars. So don't worry about that. I really focus on revolutions, such as the French Revolution, Grecian, Latin American, etc. I will focus on industrialization and then imperialization and how this impacts areas that have been controlled. So to start, one of the first questions I had was the phases of the French Revolution. So there are 4 key phases that we really focus on. So the first phase is kind of like moderate phase, and this is where the third estate locks themselves. Gets locked out of the Estates General Meeting, and they go to a tennis court, they lock themselves in, and they vow not to leave until they create a new constitution. So this is the tennis court oath. With that, they create a new constitution. The main goal was to limit the monarchy's power and protect the rights of the people, which they do. However, this is going to be short-lived because you have people like Maximilian Robespierre, where they thought this wasn't enough. The King Louis XVI and his wife and children were trying to escape, and with that, the radicals take over and they are determined to create a republic. And they execute the king, the queen, and a lot of their ladies and waiting and men as traitors to France. With this, it ushers in the second phase, which is the radical phase after the Reign of Terror. So we've done that essay on the Reign of Terror and how at first everyone was either in agreement or afraid to speak up. A lot of people were being arrested and like, oh yeah, these trials are pretty fair. But they really weren't. And towards the end, so they're losing power, oppression. Ultimately, he too will be executed via guillotine. Into the second phase, the radical phase, and ending the Reign of Terror. I just thought this ironic because he was the leader of the Committee for Public Safety. And then you get the third phase of directories. So you have a 5-man directory working as a committee, but they are short-lived as well. There's a lot of corruption, still issues with taxes and money. And so ultimately, we see the fourth and final phase is going to be ushered in by Napoleon. So Napoleon is that fourth phase. He comes in quickly. He makes himself the emperor of France, and it's really okay. But that's going to come to an end as he starts to expand into neighboring countries. He makes a couple of big mistakes. Like he's angry with, for instance, he creates this continental system, trying to cut off continental Europe from Great Britain because he's trying to put their economy, but really this just kind of slows trade and hurts France. He also tries to force Portugal to comply But speak of Portugal, he spoke of Spain. This is known as the Peninsula War because it was the Iberian Peninsula, and the people of Spain refused to allow him to march his army through Spain to get to Portugal. He never makes it there. And then, of course, he suffers massive losses when he tries to invade Russia, and the winter really just November. So this is like in the last ice age, so it's really, really cold. Russia's cold to begin with. And as he pushes into Russia with his troops, Russia is pulling back and burning everything that it's supposed to policy. And in the end, they are just way too far away from France and their supplies, and he ends up losing most of his units. And people just on that. But he also ushers in like this era of nationalism throughout Europe because people in Europe are not going to be being told by Napoleon or the French, and so you have them like unite to push back. Ultimately, he is defeated not once but twice because he escapes and tries to come back, and then he ends up dying on Elba in exile. So those are the 4 phases, but keep in mind that this is going to have a lasting impact, this revolution. I mean, in the end, they have the Congress of Vienna, where they basically try to redraw the boundaries of which they were before the French Revolution, trying to get the monarchy back. Some of the right stay, like some of the middle class still keeps their power and things like that. But really, this sets up Latin America and the Caribbean for their revolutions, because you have like the Haitian Revolution where the slaves rise up, and so like Toussaint Louverture had been educated in France, and he's inspired by not only the American Revolution, but the French Revolution and the Enlightenment, and gets all of these slaves to rise up, and they're successful. It's the first successful slave revolt, and Haiti becomes independent. But you also see that during the Napoleonic era, the Napoleonic Wars, Spain and other countries are so focused fighting Napoleon, but they're really cut off from their colonial empire. And so Spain specifically is really cut off. It can't really do anything in Latin America. And their people in Latin America really start to kind of question their rights and their power. So if you remember in Latin America, they have this social hierarchy, and you have the Creoles, which were Spanish descendants born in the New World, and they didn't have as much power as Peninsulares, people from Europe who lived in Latin America. They were limited to what they could do, and they really start to question this, and they are going to rise up. And they're going to push back and have their own revolutions and gain independence. Simon Bolivar, is going to help gain independence in a number of Latin American countries. He was really pushing for his idea of a Grand Colombia. He wanted all of Latin America to be united, but it's too large, and then you have natural boundaries like Amazon rainforest, Amazon River, the Andes Mountains, and it just made it too difficult to fully unite them. So his dream was never really fully accomplished. But they're not only inspired by the Enlightenment and these revolutions, but they had an opportunity, because while Spain was so busy fighting Napoleon, not only were they cut off, they're kind of weakened, and that's like a great opportunity to now fight back. So, not sure. Oh, hi. So key events of the French Revolution. I mean, you're not going to remember every little detail. You should know that the first phase starts with the third estate naming themselves the National Assembly. They take the transport oath. They limit the powers of the monarchy, but then they create a new constitution, and then you get the Declaration of Rights of Man, which outlines their rights. But then you get the king and queen try to escape. Robespierre and his followers take power, execute the king and queen, and create a republic. The Committee for Public Safety ushers in that reign of terror. They are attempting to protect the republic, but at great cost to the people. Tens of thousands of people are executed by guillotine. Robespierre falls himself to the guillotine when people finally realize, like, hey, this isn't working. And then that brings in the directory. The directory is corrupt. They fail. Napoleon comes in. And then that leads to the Napoleonic Wars, where he's going to Russia. He's fighting against Great Britain. He tries to invade Spain. I just went through all that. And then he's defeated. And again, at the end of his defeat, the Congress of Vienna comes in, and we have Clemens von Metternich, of Austro-Hungary, who will now oversee that convention to redraw those boundaries and try to maintain the balance of power. They don't want France or any other nation getting too large again. But this is where we start to see kind of the foundational work for issues, problems that we're going to see coming up in the next unit. Um, by the defeat of Napoleon, nationalism has spread. Italy and Germany will finally unify and actually become the nations that you're familiar with today. Like prior, you had a bunch of German city-states, and same with Italy, a bunch of different city-states, and then finally you get the country of Italy and the country of Germany, and then this is where some of that foundation for what will become World War I starts to kind of get laid, and we'll move into that in 1946. Hopefully that was helpful. There's another question like that so far. The impacts of the revolution, again, the French Revolution is, we see the middle class emerge with some political power, that bourgeoisie. In France, Napoleonic Code, a law code that applies to everyone regardless of their station in life, still very significant even today. And then just the inspiration for Latin America to have their own revolutions as well. That's going to be the impacts of that revolution. And then we see the big focus is on the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution, again, begins in Great Britain. It's like the perfect storm. They've got the capital, the money, they've got the people, they've got waterways, they've got coals, they've got everything they really need to really get industrialization to take off. And then this spreads to various nations throughout the world, in the United States. And what we see is some significant impacts. Machines are replacing workers, which has pros and cons. Like on one hand, you're producing goods a lot faster and a lot cheaper, so people can buy more. At the same time, work conditions are really kind of crappy. Like you're working long, hard hours in very dangerous conditions. You're competing with a lot of people for work, and as technology gets better, technology and machines are starting to replace workers, and they don't need as many workers, and that becomes problematic. But you also have the environmental impact, not only from the pollution of the factories, but also, you just destroy the earth, mining for coal and other resources. Ultimately, though, these nations that have industrialized need to look outside their borders for various reasons. And this is how industrialization is linked to imperialism. Great Britain is motivated that they not only need more markets to sell goods to, but they also need resources. And this is the case for every nation that becomes imperialistic. There is that element of like the white man's burden that we talked about, where they really, white Europeans really feel they have this responsibility for civilizing other people and bringing Christianity. But, what it comes down to is money. They want to make money, they want to become more powerful, and so they need markets to, sell things to people, and they need resources. That's really going to motivate them. Plus, with the Industrial Revolution, you now have new technology, so you have like steamships, where the keel, the bottom of the boat, is not as deep as a sailboat, and then you can now go into rivers that aren't as deep, and you can more easily go upriver. Plus, you have the development of like vaccines and other medicines. So places where Europeans couldn't go before without probably dying, they now can get there. And this specifically is going to impact the interior of Africa. I know in review today in class, a lot of you were confused about the question about when does colonization of Africa really begin. And the transatlantic slave trade is pretty much done by the time we've industrialized, because we just don't need that type of labor once we've created these new systems via industrialization. You just go to a place and you can exploit their people. So you don't need to bring people from Africa to the Caribbean anymore. You just go into Africa and exploit the people in Africa. You don't need to take Indians and bring them anywhere. You just go into India and exploit Indians and make them do cash crops there so that you can benefit financially off of them. Let me see other questions. Yes, industrialization and imperialism. As far as like the trade in Nanking, so China's interesting because there's that scramble for Africa where all these European nations are trying to push into Africa to get access to their resources, natural resources, gold, rubber, people. And so we had talked a little bit today during a review about, the scramble for Africa, but all these European nations recognize the fact that they're competing with each other to get this land. And so they hold that Berlin conference in Berlin where the European nations came, and they don't invite anyone from any African tribe or nation at the time. And they're like, let's divide up Africa amongst all the European nations. And with that, they completely ignore the tribal boundaries. They ignore different groups that maybe might not live well together because they've been like historically enemies, and some of these tribes are divided. Other tribes are pushed together, they're at war, and this is going to have lasting consequences post-colonialism in Africa. So the scramble for Africa and the Berlin Conference often will show, European powers have a pie that represents Africa, or maybe you'll even see like a map of Africa before and after. They completely ignore these boundaries, and it's going to come up again as we get further into like decolonization and 20th century problems. And of course, in China is different. China still experiences imperialism, but not like we see in like India or Africa. So they experience these spheres of influence, because imperialism could be, I'm like, use those in my classes. Spheres of influence are how China experiences imperialism. So imperialism, you might have one nation colonize another nation completely, take them over politically, economically, socially, and impact them. Sometimes it's just for economics. So these spheres of influence are about economic influence and control. And what we see in China is different countries have influence economically over these different spheres. And you guys did some work on that Friday, looking at the spheres of influence. So a sphere of influence is just like a section that you influence. So Great Britain would influence China and really kind of control the economic systems and exploit the economics there. And this, of course, is tied to those opium wars, because we talked about the fact that China didn't really want anything being produced in Great Britain. And Great Britain didn't want to keep spending their money from the New World and their other colonies buying luxury items from China. So Great Britain gets their colonies. So I'm getting distracted. My kids going to get an ice pop. I don't know how to ice pops. So Great Britain gets their colonists in India to grow poppies, which are then processed into opium. The opium is then given to people in China until they get severely addicted, to which the British can now sell these drugs to the Chinese and then get their goods without having to take their money that they've earned through other colonies to buy the goods. Because of course leads to those opium wars we looked at, and then ends with that unfair treaty, the Treaty of Nanking. So the Treaty of Nanking, while greatly benefits Great Britain, it does give them control, and they're able to choose different Chinese officials. So it can benefit some people in China that are going to work closely with the British. But the Chinese are forced to pay reparations. So they have to pay back Great Britain for the opium that was destroyed in the war. Hong Kong is given to the British until the late 1990s. I was alive when Hong Kong was returned. And even today, Hong Kong is vastly different than mainland China. And there's been some problems throughout the past few years because the people of Hong Kong are looking for more open democracy, whereas China is known for censoring and keeping things quiet. And this has become problematic for people in Hong Kong who've experienced what life was like more under the British rule. So yeah, I mean, most people in China are definitely not going to benefit from that treaty. For some people, their lives might not really change much anyways. I mean, if you're a farmer and you just farm out in the country, other than perhaps having to fight in the open wars, I mean, your day-to-day life might not have changed that much. And you just now have parts of China being influenced economically. But of course, whenever you have people from different areas living together, they're going to learn about different cultures. And then we see that Christianity will spread into China. And you'll have like the Taiping Rebellion where you have this group of Christians who are following this gentleman who claims to be like the second coming of Jesus. Like, it's all crazy. And then that gets crushed. And then the boxers rise up and they're like the harmonious fists and they do martial arts and they work out and they think that's going to make them impervious to bullets, which is not the case. And you have a whole coalition of foreign militaries, Japanese, American, British, etc., who band together to defeat the boxers so they can keep their control of the spheres of influence in China, so they can keep trading. Because they want that market. You're talking millions and millions of people in China they can sell goods to. Let's see. I don't have any more questions. Other than what has been submitted. So yeah, Scramble for Africa and Spheres of Influence. So Scramble for Africa is more about European nations trying to get into Africa and get access to the land and the resources and the people before other European nations. But then they have that Berlin conference that kind of like, hey, let's do this so we're not competing and fighting each other. And then the Spheres of Influence, different countries will take different sections of China. It's just kind of control. Sometimes they'll show like them slicing a pizza or cake or something else and says China as they like just carve it up there. Phases of the British in India. So you have the Gupta fall to the Mughal, who are branched off on Mongols, and they've really declined by the time the British East India Company come in. So the British East India Company really come into India to control them and gain access to cash crops. And for a while, they're operating on their own. They had their own private military. But then you had that Sepoy rebellion where Sepoys, who were Indian natives fighting in the British military, rise up against the British East India Company. And then that's where the British crown steps in and they make India part of the British Empire. Because they're like, sorry, British East India Company, you're not maintaining control over these people. And if you can't do it, we can. And that's where they take over control of India. And then they set that up where there's like the Indian Raj, who's kind of like prince, working under like the control of like the British viceroys, etc. And then of course there's like at various points where there's like pushback, and then you have Indians fight in both world wars for the British, and they're like, dude, how come we don't have independence? And that's kind of messed up. And then ultimately, through Gandhi's work, we see the boycotts and marches, and that helps gain some international press. And then ultimately, India will gain independence from Great Britain in the late 40s, 1940s. Gandhi won't live to see it fully. He was assassinated by a Hindu nationalist who felt he was too sympathetic to Muslims in India. And then India's divided, it's partitioned. So you get East and West Pakistan. Um, East Pakistan will become Bangladesh, and then you have India. And in the process, you have millions of people fleeing from India and Pakistan into the other nations. So you have a lot of Muslims in India going to Pakistan. You have Hindus in Pakistan coming into India, and in the process, there's a lot of violence, and anywhere between 500,000 and 1 million people died during that transition. And then, of course, the British were in such a rush that they forgot to continue the line of the borders of the nations up through the Kashmir region. And even today, there's still a lot of conflict between Pakistan and India over who controls the Kashmir region, and there's still violence. And I'm still in full support of you going to Amazon Prime and paying $2.99 to get the new Doctor Who episode on the partition of Israel. And while you're at it, pay another $2.99 for the Rosa Parks episode. I do not get any money from Amazon, but they're both excellent episodes. And if you're looking to chill out and still get some history, they're really good. I think that the partition of India one is particularly good because you really kind of understand why there's so much violence with India standing against divided, and how people would want to support that kind of violence. It's really interesting. Let's see. Main rebellions on colonies or other imperialist powers besides the Sepoy. The Taiping and Boxer in China. I would know Sepoy in India. Sepoy are the Indian soldiers in the British military in India. So they are Indian nationalists. They are Hindu or Muslim, and they fight for the British. And some of you in class were like, how do they do that? Well, if you remember in India, there was a pretty strict caste system, which the British disagreed with and thought shouldn't be practiced. So for some people who might have been very low in those castes, working in the British military gave them opportunities they might not have prior. But also, you know, besides having to be in the military, if you work your way up, become an officer or whatever, you might be able to make money, which you like for your kids. And let's see, of course, I mean, the American Revolution, right? We were like one of the first to show the world how to do it, and we were pushing back against those British colonial powers. And then, ironically, we became more about that next year. If you have, well, if you have any different we can talk about. Other questions, because I didn't get many submitted prior. Some of them were like this similar to each other. Let's see. Man, I've only been doing this for like a half hour, and I feel like I've gone through so much information. Other things you might want to think about. Keep in mind the motivations of these imperialist nations. Like, why are they really there? What do they really want? I mean, it's mostly about the money, but then keep in mind too that white man's burden piece, where for some Europeans, they really truly felt it was a responsibility to civilize these people. So if you think about, like, you know, you subdue, you conquer, you civilize, you know, the Paris soap ad, you know, where people are being taught that to be civilized means they have to be clean. And, you know, some of them were also encouraged to change their culture. The British pushed Christianity on some groups, but also like some Hindu and Muslim beliefs were told, you know, were said to be wrong, like ritual, the ritual of sati, where a woman would throw herself on her husband's funeral pyre. In India, like the British were like, no, we don't do that anymore. Which, I mean, in the 21st century, we're like, yeah, that's like barbaric, but it was part of their culture and had been for centuries. But even, you know, the caste system as well, like in the 21st century, like, yeah, why would you have that? But again, it's part of their culture and they're being told they're wrong, they can't do it, that they're uncivilized. Industrial revolution and nationalism. Well, industrial revolution is more linked to imperialism because you need access to more markets to sell more goods. Like I say, I'm like, you know, Americans consume a lot of crap, but there's only so much crap we can make them consume. So you have to find other people to buy our crap, right? But nationalism is more tied to the French Revolution, just because it inspires people to fight back against the French as Napoleon expands, and it helps them unite. And like, we don't want a French king, we're Spaniards, we want a Spanish king. Or we don't want an Italian, French king in Italy, we're Italian, and then that helps lead to like Italian unification stuff. You could make the case for nationalism later on with industrialization, because industrialization allows the nation to build a more modern military, which creates like competition. The bigger your empire is, the more powerful you are. So that can help really build like national pride. And then also you see, like, I'm really making a case for the connection between industrialization and imperialism, or nationalism and that. But so the Industrial Revolution, as you modernize and get more powerful, and of course people are going to have that pride, but then also if you're pushing to other areas, they're going to push back. You know, independence movements are essentially nationalist movements. So in India, when like Gandhi comes up to fight back against the British colonists, that's a nationalist movement. He wants a free India, right? No. So periodization 5 is like forever. It includes revolutions. It technically also includes like non-political revolutions, like communism. I know some people in the class get really excited about that, but I'm not doing that on this test. Saving it, so when we talk about World War I and the Russian Revolution, we can really dive into communists and communist leaders. So really this test is mostly going to be French Revolution, how it leads to like the Haitian, Latin American revolutions, Industrial Revolution, that the impacts of the Industrial Revolution, imperialism, and impacts of colonization are really the main focuses. Other questions? I can only go till 7:30 because I'm old and tired and I want to go to bed by 8. So I'm going to try my best to get those tests set on the desk when you come in. Unfortunately, there's a class that's in there before us, so it depends on how quickly they get out. I recommend you guys come in ASAP and help me like get the desk set. I'm gonna set them in rows in the morning since I'm in there first thing, and hopefully they stay relatively that way. You will need a number 2 pencil. I'll have some extra ones if you need, but spring days. But again, you have 4 minutes in between classes. So if you come right from class, you should have a few extra minutes to kind of get situated with that. It's 40 multiple choice. They're all in 2 to 4 sets per like stimulus. You might want to like look at the questions before you jump into the documents. Keep in mind, some of the questions can be answered without even looking at the document. Sometimes the document is just to kind of help you make a connection. But if you know what's going on and you understand, you should be okay. One of the things I noticed when we were in class reviews and practice questions today is sometimes you didn't really understand the question, and then you're looking at the answers and trying to figure it out, and then you pick the wrong one. So make sure you know what the question's asking. The AP questions tend to be kind of convoluted. It's not straightforward, like this is what we want from you. So just look at the question, like, okay, what are they asking me? What are they looking for? And you can do that by like looking for key terms in the questions, maybe underlining them, and then looking at the options. I did talk about the partition of India already, fleeing Pakistan into India, Muslims fleeing India into Pakistan. Millions of people migrate, and it's estimated as high as a million people die in those migrations from the virus. So yes, there is negative impacts. And the guy who divided it up, British guy who divided up India and Pakistan, forgot to draw that line all the way through the Kashmir region, so they're still fighting today. Other questions? The Industrial Revolution and the impact on imperialism, just remember, they become imperialistic because they need resources, they need markets, but they're also powerful enough to become imperialistic. They have modern weapons, modern army. If you're colonizing a region of Africa, such as like in South Africa, the Zulu had spears and leather shields. Like, how are they going to stop a Maxim gun? Like, they're just rapidly fired. So you have industrialization not only leading to this motivation, but it's giving them the power to subdue and colonize these areas. Anything on Russia? No, I'm saving Russia for World War One and then the Russian Revolution. I mean, they had a sphere of influence in China, but you would, if there was a question like that, it would probably be like a map or something along those lines. Like, they never just randomly be like, hey, name a nation that had a sphere of influence in China, right? Like, that's not going to be a question. Again, you're not going to be given a question where you have to specifically identify like which European nation is in a specific region. They're looking at big ideas, things that connect to the themes, continuities and changes, similarities and differences. Like, these skills and these themes are going to come into play. They're never going to like just pull a question out and be like, hey, which nation was in South Africa? I mean, a few, but reduction in the British. But yeah, they're never gonna really ask that. It's gonna be more of like the impact, or did people resist? So think about the sample questions you saw today. It's gonna be things like that. They're not gonna ask you like, what date did this happen? They might ask you chronologically, like put them in order. But again, like I've always said, like I'm terrible with dates. Like I never even remember my anniversary. Lucky to remember my kid's birthday. But if you remember what order they're happening, that's sufficient. If you remember dates, great. More power to you. I can't. But I know when about to take place, and I know the order took place. Question. This is why I like questions to make beforehand, and I'm just sitting there looking. So I'll stay here a couple of minutes, but there's no other questions. I'm gonna log out. A lot of the stuff that's coming through, I've already said, and I'm just like repeating myself at this point. What do I think is the best way to study? I would look at the study guides that were given to you at the beginning of the unit. I would see if I could complete them if I haven't. If I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on, I would maybe go back and watch the videos I posted just for a brief overview. With the practice questions that we did in class, if you didn't do all of them, you could look at the rest of them. Freemanpedia will have a really good summary and timelines of each periodization, and there's probably practice questions in there you could do. Your review book. So you could go to your review book and you could go and look up information on the Industrial Revolution, imperialism, the political revolution, and that book has practice questions in it as well after each section. So you can do those, you can make flashcards, which would come in handy for the AP exam and the intelligence exam. I wouldn't just read over your notes. It doesn't really do anything. You can do something different. So make flashcards, or maybe complete graphic organizers. Do practice questions, but just reading over the notes it's why bother. Reading and writing something is going to help you remember more than just reading over it. Also, teaching it to other people really helps you learn it and understand it. So you could always like FaceTime with a friend and like go over and explain different things to each other and help clarify things to each other. The key terms on it in your overviews, like if you don't know some of those key terms, you should look them up. Because I always say, if you don't know what nationalism is, or you don't know what imperialism is, you cannot answer the question about it because you don't understand it. So you really need to make sure you understand those. Awesome. Thank you. Some of you were kind of struggling in class. I posted the vocabulary list I use in my Global 10 class. They're just real basic, just the real basic terms. So if you are overwhelmed and you're like, I just don't know where to begin, I would maybe start there. Just kind of focus other to people, to concepts, things like that. So that might be useful. Other questions? Let's see. Review. Just pulling up the graphic organizers to see if there's anything I want to point out. Oh, in class, when we were looking at some of the Japan questions about Japan modernizing, people were kind of confused. So the Tokugawa shogunate had been isolated. They're the ones who had like the shoguns and the samurai swords, and then under Matthew Perry showed up from the United States with the industrialized like warships, and it's like, and Japan's like, okay, because they do not want to end up like China and other nations that have been imperialized. But they're like the opposite example of everything else we looked at, because they embrace modernization. The government gets behind it. The government sends people to Western nations like Great Britain and the United States to learn industrial processes, and bring it back to Japan. The government also buys factories and land and sells them really cheap to business owners so they can like expand. They create like a modern military. They create public education and modern government and constitution, and they just rapidly industrialize. But Japan is an island and has limited resources, and so for a while they're getting what they need for industrialization by trade. But then the Great Depression is going to prevent that, and we see that as they become more modern and need those resources, they become more aggressive and become imperialistic and push into like Korea and Manchuria and China to get those. Um, but we'll probably look more into Japan's aggression when we do lead up to religion. I didn't stress too much about the aggression piece, but they rapidly industrialize. And that's tied to Meiji restoration, like Meiji modernization. They modernize their I'm glad I opened this because I saw that as a bug. I saw that in class. So you mentioned this. Um, I can think of off the top of my head. This is something that we're going through. Talk about. Um, so I'll just chill here a couple more minutes, and if there's no more questions, I'll kind of drop out. Um, keep in mind when you're studying, again, the ideas, themes, about the skills, like when you think about imperialism, like what are the motivations and how does this change these areas that are being colonized? Um, oh man. Sorry, for some reason I had Billy Joel. That's called my Amazon package is shipped. I'm getting some from people. One of my favorite presidents is from his country. Sorry, Misha did not come to visit. She left the month. Okay. Well, I feel like an idiot just sitting here. I will be in D as in dog 114 in the morning. So if you're reviewing and you realize something, you can pop in. You can take to school, try to email me, and I can try to respond in the morning. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and kill this so that I can hang out with the kids before bedtime and all that good stuff. Yeah.